There is a controversial part of Christian Solidarity International, and that's dealing with slaves, dealing with abductees. And some have used the term purchased, some have used the term returned in some manner or another, and there's a debate. The UN says you should never, quote-unquote, buy slaves, try to free slaves by paying the people who have stolen them. On the other hand, if I am a slave owner and I have a slave that I know has value, it may be less than the value of a goat, but it is still value, I'm not going to let go of them without some sort of payment. Now, I understand that CSI has been involved in freeing slaves by paying for them and then bringing them back to their villages. The UN has been very unhappy with that, and it's been very, very public. How do you reconcile those two?
Well, I believe in helping the individual, and I believe in helping the individual become free if we can do it in a way that the community is happy with. And so what we have actually done here is not brought in our own program for freeing slaves. We provide some support for a mechanism for freeing slaves that existed before CSI even came here. Women, fathers or uncles or brothers would go to the north, or they would engage an Arab to go to try to find their enslaved loved one, pay money, or provide some goods for the return. After having visited the area a number of times, we felt that we should support this community that had been completely abandoned by the United Nations, completely abandoned by the governments of the world. In fact, when we first came here, it was a no-go area, and the Red Cross, the NGOs, simply would not come here. So we felt we should be here and that we should cooperate with the community and try to support what they were doing to get their enslaved people back. The minute that the community leaders here say this is in some way harmful or undesirable, we would stop.
I just spoke with a young man who's had his two nieces enslaved. And I just spoke with somebody from the UN just before that saying we should never pay for slaves. And yet I look into the eyes of this young man saying, don't go get your nieces back. Just let them stay there and maybe the system will work itself out. And it seems that the cost of doing nothing would be borne by those two nieces, and the other tens of thousands of people have been taken. How do you convince the UN that they're wrong?
Well, I probably will not convince the United Nations that they're wrong. All I can say is that I would have a hard time living with myself knowing that I had the means to free somebody from slavery and to do so in a way that the community was happy with, that the community feels does no damage to the interests of the community, and to leave them to be beaten, to be raped, for the women to be genitally mutilated, to be forced to accept an alien culture and religion. I think that it's a question that the United Nations really needs to answer, why they would prefer to leave people to be abused. Slavery is an internationally recognized crime against humanity. Why the United Nations would prefer to leave people as victims of crimes against humanity than to cooperate with the local community here and friendly Arabs who help in this process to provide the equivalent of a goat for the freedom of somebody.
Don't you fear, though, that doing this would help establish or help perpetuate a system that may result in even more people being taken tomorrow? I can save that one child right in front of me now by purchasing them or trading them for a goat, but those people will simply come back tomorrow and take two. Then isn't that on your hands or somebody like yours?
Yeah, theoretically this can happen, but that is not what has happened. And of course, if that were to be the case, that we were to fuel a slave trade, that more women and children were taken, the community leaders would say, don't do it. But what we have found is that, especially in recent years, the slave raiding has diminished for various political factors, because it's primarily a political and military issue. And today, as we stand here, women and children are not being enslaved from this area. So we have not fueled the slave trade. We have not brought about an increase in the number of men enslaved. It has been just the opposite.
John.
You're welcome.
And this is Jack Rice and Gok Machar in Sudan.